Our shortest batch of nominees in a while, but at least that meant the return of the highly commended films. Hey everybody, welcome to Mainely Movies. Today we're gonna finally be jumping into some long-form Oscar-related content. I've got my annual ongoing short series ranking the nominees in each of the 23 Oscar categories, but I wanted to dig a little deeper here and bring you some content that focuses on arguably the most underappreciated and underseen categories, the short films. I was lucky enough to be able to see all of the Oscar-nominated shorts again this year, so I wanted to talk about them as part of my annual 3-part Rankography series. This way, even people who haven't had a chance to watch them might have at least an opportunity to get a sense of them before the ceremony. If you're new here, please consider subscribing for a variety of movie-related content, like reviews, rank lists, and trailer reactions. I'll be talking about the documentary and live-action shorts later this week, but today we're beginning with the animated shorts. Of the 3 shorts categories, this is usually the most widely screened, and is typically viewed as the lightest, though that's not always the case. This year, things were more on the heavy side when it came to subject matter. The 5 nominees are Letter to a Pig, 95 Senses, Our Uniform, Pachyderme, and War is Over. Since this is a rankography, I'm going to be ranking these shorts. But remember, this is just my ranking, not the ranking, so be sure to post your own personal ranking of the 2024 animated short film Oscar nominees in the comments below. Coming in at number 5, Letter to a Pig. This is a joint French and Israeli submission and was directed by Tal Kantor. Using a mixture of styles, including abstract line art, rotoscoping, and even incorporating real black and white footage, this short tells the story of a man recounting his experiences during the Holocaust to a group of students. Even though I've got this in last place here, I didn't dislike this short. It had some good and really interesting elements, and then it had some stuff that didn't work quite as much for me. The animation style for this particular short is a very interesting mix. I'm not entirely sure if this is the case, but it seemed like most of the first half or so of this film was primarily done using rotoscoping, at least in part. However, the animation style does shift as the film progresses. Things start off with this very realistic but sketched out type of style, before transitioning into an interesting blend of almost abstract line art composited with actual footage, pulling focus away from faces and instead placing emphasis on hands, before finally transitioning to something much more surreal and fluid. From a story perspective, this film isn't quite as interesting as its animation is. I much preferred the first half of this film, focusing on the actual story this Holocaust survivor tells, as well as the impact it has on the students in the class. But then things take a turn into what's sort of a daydream of one of the students. This part is much more visually interesting, with some action and a bit of suspense and even a little creepiness or horror, but the intention and themes get muddled at this point. Coming in at number 4, Our Uniform. This is an Iranian submission and was directed by Yegan Mohadim. This very brief short incorporates art drawn over top actual items of clothing and tells the recounted story of the director's experiences with strict clothing rules while attending school in Iran as a girl. At only 7 minutes, this short flies by, but I do think it's just about the perfect length for this particular story, because it's not really a narrative story at all. Instead, it's more of a memory or a nostalgic observation, with the director recalling her time in school and how everybody in this all-girls school still had to wear hijab. This isn't a film that makes a case for or against this really, but it does get at the sense of freedom that comes from being able to choose what you wear. The story at the heart of this film is pretty simple as a result, but this film's big draw is its style. Fittingly, a story about clothing incorporates that clothing into the animation style. Jeans, shirts, hijabs, belts, all sorts of different clothes are used as the canvas for the art here. Not only does this impart a very tactile, textured quality to the animation, but it also allows for a lot of creativity. Pockets move as animated characters shift within them. Animated vehicles weave around buttons or travel through sleeves. Zippers and safety pins open and close various scenes. It's a very interesting experiment in mixed media art. Coming in at number 3, Pachyderme. This is a French submission and was directed by Stephanie Clement. With a warm and textured digital watercolor style, this short focuses on a woman's memories of going to stay with her grandparents for a vacation as a young girl, and the uneasiness and fear that came along with that. This is easily the most subtle of the nominees this year. Certainly within the animated shorts category, but maybe within any of the shorts categories. Narrated by the adult version of the protagonist, this film is initially bathed in a warmly nostalgic glow. Even the animation style reflects this. Almost everything in the short is presented with a relatable childlike perspective. The little girl's creeped out by an elephant tusk in the hallway. She thinks she sees eyes in the ceiling at night. She's scared of creaking floorboards and imagines being able to blend into the wallpaper so she can't be seen. This all has a kind of innocent and imaginative scared of the dark quality to it. But the fears here come from something much darker than the dark. Like I said, it's subtle, but there's a shift in this story, and it suddenly becomes apparent what this film is actually about. And so we end up with this really sad exploration of trauma and pain, and how those things can be embedded and buried within a person's memories. Coming in at number 2, 95 Senses. This is a US submission and was co-directed by the duo of Jared Hess and Jerusha Hess. It uses a variety of different animation styles to tell the life and regrets of a man through his experiences with the five senses. So I've got to admit that this short, and my opinion of it, got off to an iffy start. It's a story that works its way through the five senses, starting with sight. The animation's dynamic at the beginning, but this short initially presents us with an old southern man drawling on about kids and their cell phones, and how he's never used one, and so forth. This had me concerned, because I thought it might end up being one of those anti-tech, back in my day kind of stories, but thankfully, it's not that at all. I went into the short with zero knowledge about it, so I'm not going to spoil a certain important reveal in the story for you either, but let's just say that we learn something about this main character that recontextualizes the entirety of the story in a surprising way. It's interesting, because it's both a film about memory and about experiencing the present, and focuses on the important role of our five senses to both of those things. Since the story progresses and shifts a bit with each sense that's covered, it's only fitting that the animation changes with each section as well. So, including an animated sequence of our main character in the present, there are actually 6 unique animation styles here, each animated by a separate team. So that means my number 1 Oscar animated short of 2024 is War is Over, inspired by the music of John and Yoko. This is a US production and was directed by Dave Mullins. Using blocky watercolor CG animation, it tells the story of 2 soldiers who play a game of chess via carrier pigeon, unaware that they're fighting for opposite sides. So I have a feeling that not many people are going to put this at number 1. In direct contrast with the subtlety of a short like Pachyderme, this short is as blunt and heavy-handed with its messaging as you could possibly be. There are admittedly some eye-rolling and cheesy moments, like when the expected song finally kicks in, but I've gotta say that I liked this one. Yes, it's completely oversimplified with its anti-war message and its alternate history envisioning of World War I, but it fits an interesting story into that construct. There's something so unique about the idea of playing chess via carrier pigeon, especially when you realize that the characters have no idea who they're actually playing against. We as the audience know that they're soldiers from opposite sides of the war, of course, so it's pretty predictable that they're going to eventually meet on the battlefield, but it's still a pretty positive and uplifting story. The animation style definitely has a bit of a high-end video game quality to it, but interestingly enough, it actually sort of reminded me of early DreamWorks animation, specifically Ants. It wasn't identical or anything, but there was something about the way these geometric CG characters were shaded and lit that was just a little nostalgic for me in that regard. Okay, so I know I just went through the 5 nominees, but we're not done, because there are 2 more shorts to talk about. That's right, after 2 years without them, the highly commended shorts have returned. Basically, these are shorts that just missed the cut for being nominated and get added to the end of the nominee reel to pad out the time to something closer to theatrical length to make theatrical viewing worth the cost of a normal ticket. So I want to take a little bit of time to quickly talk about and rank this year's 2 highly commended animated shorts. Coming in at number 2, I'm Hip. This is a US submission and was directed by John Musker. This is a hand-drawn, cartoonishly styled musical short that follows a cat as he sings and dances his way through a city, telling anybody who will listen about just how cool and hip he is. While not actually a Disney short, this is the closest we get to something Disney this year, with John Musker, of course, being a studio alum, having co-directed a number of animated movies, including The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Hercules. This short definitely has a throwback cartoon feel to it, and I appreciated the animation, but man is that cat annoying. And coming in at number 1, Wild Summon. This is a UK submission and was co-directed by Carney Ariely and Saul Freed, narrated by Marianne Faithfull. This is a photorealistically CG animated nature documentary about the life cycle and migratory behavior of salmon. The catch? No pun intended. The salmon don't actually look like salmon, and are instead these bizarrely humanoid creatures who look like divers, complete with masks, which they're born with. It's a weird film for sure. I think the intention was obviously to humanize salmon in a way that makes us more empathetic to them and the various related environmental and social issues, but the choice to actually physically anthropomorphize them is a little weird. There's definitely some uncanny valley stuff going on with this, otherwise hyper-realistically animated film, but it's definitely memorable, and at least I couldn't stop watching, even if I was kind of disturbed and put off by it throughout. Alright, so that's my rankography of the 2024 Oscar nominees for animated short film. Have you had a chance to see these animated shorts? If so, what does your ranking look like? I'd love to see some reasoning for your order, so be sure to post it in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out my rankographies of the documentary and live-action shorts later this week, as well as my entire Oscar ranking short series. Alright, so if you got some enjoyment, insight, or information out of this rankography, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please hit subscribe while you're at it to see more rankographies like this, as well as movie reviews. Till next time, this has been Alyssa with Mainly Movies, the way life should be.